Look, I've got the diary out. I've checked the schedule. I'm a busy person. I've double checked. I've looked again, and I just can't fit it in. There's no time for me to die. Okay, Will?
I wish you would just fall out the sky.
Well, lucky for you, I'm going to have a quantum of solace and not talk to you, I guess.
Wow, really is a spectre. I don't think that even makes sense, but I'll roll with it.
I don't know. I want to go to a casino royale.
No, you just killed it. No.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Hit or Miss Big Screen podcast, where, as I alluded to there, we're going to be reviewing the latest James Bond film, No Time to Die. I know it's a little bit later, but we've had some scheduling snafus and whatnot, and people might still be
haven't. As far as the audience are aware, we uploaded this on the right day. What we did do was, after the last recording, we changed the schedule a bit to have this released last week. But as far as the audience are concerned, it's going up on the day we said it was. So okay. None of that, none of the sly digs. Ha ha ha.
Okay, I know it's a little bit later than the film's been out for a little while, but we've had to have a chance to see it and gather our thoughts and stuff. So hopefully you're still interested in our opinions. But yeah, myself and I'm joined by my usual co-host, who would like to introduce himself right now. Go ahead.
No. No.
He forgets I have control. I can just knock him out if I wanted to. of the chat. No.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just comes to Bristol and be like, "Oh, your days are numbered, my friend." But no. I am well, Michael. How are you?
I'm good. That's Will Templar, my usual co-host, of course, on the Hit or Miss Big Screen podcast. And we've both had a chance to see No Time to Die. We've both discussed it a little bit without getting into too much detail because we wanted to save it for the podcast. But we both definitely have our thoughts, and we've both reviewed it on Letterboxd and given a particular score, which I won't say, obviously, but we'll get to at the end. Without any further ado then, Mr. Will, do you have any kind of spoiler-free thoughts about No Time to Die before we get into the full notes?
Well, first of all, before I watched this film, it was a ridiculous rush to watch the previous two films. I literally watched the two films on being Skyfall and Spectre on the morning of the screening for No Time to Die. And of course, I haven't seen these films before, so that was a rush. So to actually sit down in the cinema, just mellow out and chill and just enjoy the big picture, I loved it. I really love this film, and it took me away more than Shang-Chi. But the thing is, some may say, it's because you're watching in the cinema in IMAX, really good sound, really good picture. Maybe you're being a bit biased because, you haven't been in the cinema for a while. So I can understand that. So if you want, just knock a star off my final score, because a full star, because the why I say this is because if you think I may be a bit biased because of the cinema.
You've been to see other films, to be fair.
Oh yeah, of course, and I will touch upon that. But the last two films I have seen, if you knocked off a star, I would be in line with the consensus.
You don't have to match the blue.
Yes, I know, but I'm just saying that. But the thing is, with the two films I've also watched, so I've also watched The Courier and Stillwater, I am head on the nail. No, hammer on the head. No, hammer on the nail.
Nail on the head.
Nail on the head. That's the one. Literally every other variation of that quiz until I got to the right one. Thank you. On the consensus for that one. So I would not say
your judgment, man. It's
just my judgment. So if you think I'm unfair on this film, because I do have
you like something, I like it, man.
No, I'm just saying it. These are my thoughts, and also some context to my thoughts. So yes, I really liked it.
Fair enough,
Michael.
Well, yeah, I should probably give this the similar kind of context, which is that I am a massive James Bond fan, which people might not know because I don't quite talk about it as much as I talk about like Star Trek and Doctor Who and comic book stuff. But I'm a massive Bond fan. I've got the box set of the 50th anniversary collection, which is everything from Doctor No to Quantum of Solace at the time on Blu-ray. It was an expensive set that my mum got me one Christmas. I've got the others obviously on Blu-ray, including a steelbook since. I've got I've got the James Bond novels, encyclopedias and things, books. Yeah. So I'm a massive Bond fan. So I went into this obviously not only having seen the previous movies, but having owned them and kind of studied them quite well. So My experience was different to Will, who hadn't seen the previous films, but then kind of binged them just before the movie. So again, if that's affected our scores either way, then make that decision for yourself.
Yeah, like it did its job in the sense that after I went to watch this film, literally the next day I did order the complete box set from Doctor No. Is that the first film?
From Doctor No, yeah.
From Doctor No to Spectre, because of course the box set with No Time to Die, of course, isn't out yet. It's up in my bedroom right now, so that will be getting its viewing. It'll be on my Xbox, into the Xbox slot, you could say, and I'll be watching that from the very start to the very end. And if you want to know my thoughts on those films as well, you can go follow me on Letterboxd. I'll leave a link to both of our Letterboxd accounts in the description, so you guys can just go over there and see what we're watching, because like I alluded to there, we do in fact watch films that we don't review. Yes. So
I do post on Letterboxd every time though, and weirdly enough, speaking of which, from when we're recording this, tomorrow I'm going to see Venom, Let There Be Carnage and Halloween Kills, so you can probably expect some Letterboxd reviews there in a day or two. So no, we'll get there, but yeah, so if tomorrow you or the day after you see my Letterboxd reviews of those, they're not going to be super in-depth, but we will have reviews, not of Venom, we simply didn't have the time, but we will be doing a review of Halloween Kills along with something special in the coming weeks, so keep tuned to the YouTube channel for that. But yes, that's neither here nor there in relation to what we're reviewing at the moment, which is No Time to Die, the latest James Bond film. Would say the latest 007 film, but that would prove to be a contentious statement based off of this bloomin' movie. So there we go. I won't get into that yet, but we'll probably get into it a bit later. But the first thing I will ask, therefore, is obviously at the start of the movie we always start with there's a pre-credit sequence which is pretty long here, but before we touch on that, there's the obvious sort of theme tune and opening credits and everything. So obviously, because it is relevant, what are your thoughts on Billie Eilish's No Time to Die theme and the use of kind of music throughout?
Well, first of all, the pre-title sequence is really long. My nan literally pointed out that she was like, "Oh my god, was that just the start of the film?" I think it goes on for about 20 minutes before we actually get to the...
Yeah, it's one of the longer ones. I remember The World Is Not Enough is very similar. It has like a full-on 2 action scenes before the credits actually roll.
Wow. But yeah, I'm just looking at the duration now, and it was actually 24 minutes, so it was really that long.
That might be the longest.
Yeah, but well, it is a very long film anyway, so the film might be the longest, I'm not sure. But as for the theme tune, I love the chorus. I don't like the verses. I think it's too mumbled, I think it's too reverbed, and I think that's a problem with quite a bit of Billie Eilish's music. Not particularly her last album, which I did enjoy, but before the last album, it's just too reverbed. And this song did come out 2 years ago, so I understand it's her old kind of style supposedly, and I love the chorus. I think it's really catchy, and I think to praise it massively, I think the instrumental is the best out of the Bond film themes I have listened to, although I do think compared to Adele's Skyfall song, I think Adele shits over this song, but the instrumental for this one is fantastic, and also the chorus.
You sound like an old man. It's got too much reverb and auto-tune. Don't like it.
Not auto-tune, just reverb, and I don't know. It was too mumbled, and I don't like that.
I personally love it. I think it's very Bond tune. Like, I immediately recognize it as a Bond theme tune, but also like modern. It's not like, it doesn't seem old to me, or like overproduced or anything. So I really like the whole thing. And because the previous Bond theme that we got, I thought was rubbish. The Sam Smith thing. It just didn't hit right at all. And yeah, I agree. Skyfall was the quintessential, the Bond film for the current era. So that's going to take some beating, isn't it? But yeah, I mean, like I said, the most of the themes are quite hit and miss, because again, the Jack White and Alicia Keys from Quantum of Solace was also abysmal. But then I
wouldn't say that was abysmal.
See, fair. I would disagree, but okay.
Okay.
If you like it, you like it, I guess.
I didn't like it, but I just didn't find it that bad. It was catchy. Okay.
Regardless, I did love Chris Cornell, the Casino Royale theme, You Know My Name. I thought that was fantastic.
Oh, yes.
But yeah, anyway, that's regardless. I'll just touch on the Daniel Craig ones, because that's kind of what we're reviewing here.
And the title sequence itself was stunning. I think the visuals...
It always is, yeah.
Yeah, it always is, but this one particularly, how there was like clocks and stuff, and I just thought, fantastic. and like sand
always,
timers and whatever. Yeah, it was great.
I always appreciate how it ties into the theme of the film every time. Every one of the ones, you'll know that when you watch them, every one of them kind of encapsulates abstract things that are related to the plot. So in this case, it was like DNA helixes and human injections of things, and I noticed quite a lot of that stuff that became relevant, as well as like the spy stuff and the guns and the romantic stuff's always involved there. But yeah, if I should probably link to this, but if you haven't seen Alan Partridge describing the opening sequence of The Spy Who Loved Me, it's gloriously comedic, talking about how, this person's just walking along a giant Luger. She swings at the camera, a bit of bush. Nope, too late. You haven't seen anything. Yes, that is the Bond intro. Is pretty much summed up, isn't it? So,
yeah.
So yeah, anyway, I agree. I like the opening sequence. I like the song, and I like. You'll be pleased that I've made a specific note of this. That I really like the Hans Zimmer score, which I didn't notice during our Interstellar review, to your chagrin. And in terms of the actual pre-title sequence, I thought it was great. It's one of the better scenes of the film. It was really tense, although I was confused as to why exactly Bond was kind of just. And from this point on, spoilers, I should probably say, just if you haven't seen the film, come back when you have. But from the point that Bond was kind of just sitting there letting them shoot the car, and yeah, I get like he was worried about her betraying him and all that, but it was just a little bit too like, do something, which was quite jarring for me. But otherwise, it's a fantastic action sequence and everything leading up to it, and the bomb and whatnot. So yeah, what about you? Did you have any thoughts about the pre-titles sequence, Will?
No, I completely agree with you. The car sequence really... it jarred a little bit because directional, it could have been better, because I felt like it was well paced. Or it went on for about 2 minutes, I'd say, and I guess that contributes to the really long pre-title sequence. And yes, I don't think it portrayed this woman has betrayed me theme really well, because there were no close-ups. It just felt like she was struggling, and you had these wide shots of the guns from the exterior. So I don't think they portrayed that really well. And again, 2 minutes is way too long for such a scene. 30 seconds, sure, but 2 minutes is ridiculous. So other than that, I would also agree in saying the action scenes are great. Not to jump ahead, but I did see your Letterboxd review, and you did say there were no great action scenes. You said there were loads of good, but there weren't many great, which is where I would disagree with you. I think in this pre-title sequence, there's quite a few action scenes where I was really impressed, and there were two. Specifically, there was one scene where there were two action scenes. One where James Bond ducked under like a conveniently placed obstacle on the road, which the car then flipped over, and then when the bikes kind of cornered his route off on either side of the bridge, he kind of jumps off it with a conveniently placed rope to swing from. So yeah, it's plot convenience. However, I was really impressed with the action scenes, and we cut to like a wide money shot, you could say, and it's got like sun flares beaming in, and I thought it was stunning, and I thought it was a really well executed action scene. If yes, it was a bit not predictable, but easy, I suppose, because there's a get out of jail cards right there, even though we don't know until
I did
happens.
like the kind of. I will say I did like the motorbike stunt part of that particular opening sequence and everything as well.
Yeah.
And it's not that, again, I'm just reiterating what I said, because I was just talking to our friends Andy and Phil about the movie. And I've said this to you, and I said it in the Letterboxd review. I don't think there's a standout set piece that I left thinking, wow, this moment, for example, is spectacular. But I didn't think they were bad. I know there was a lot of sequences that I was like, oh, that was good. That was good. That was good. Nothing really stood out. Whereas, for example, when I left Spectre, I was like, wow, that car chase was fantastic.
Yes.
I really enjoyed it. And that high-rise building sequence was great. That was a fantastic action set piece. Like, those are two off the top of my head, and I've only seen that film a couple of times. But I could name, I left the film still thinking about those, whereas this one, I'm remembering bits of them now that you're describing it, but they didn't really
Fair.
They didn't really lodge in the memory,
Spoiler alert, if you are watching this review then and you haven't seen the film, what the hell are you doing? Click off this video.
I've already
now.
said spoilers, but yeah.
Okay, cool. However, it's not really like a flashy action scene, but how at the end where James Bond does die, quote unquote die, well, he does this iteration of this incarnation, you could say, well, this portrayal, let's say, it's a self-contained story because it is one big narrative.
That's something we'll get into, I'm sure,
yeah. So when he does die, it's not actually, well, it is technically actiony and flashy, well, massively flashy, but what I'm trying to say is it's not the typical gun chase and whatever. However, I was really left stunned that they left the scene going for so long until literally the moment he blew up. So like you had all these missiles like launching onto the island, and then they literally didn't cut until they were literally right beside him, and I thought that was fantastic, and they kind of engulfed him in the flames. That really stood out, and that's an action sequence. And if you don't think that's great,
I want to talk about that a little bit because I think that relates to one of my other points, which I should have mentioned sooner, which is I saw this film with my friend Stephen Brown, who I've done a Star Trek review with, but he came away not liking the film at all, and he refused to accept that, like, because his big criticism was, oh, James Bond doesn't die, it just won't, I can't have it, it won't happen, it's never happened in any other films, and he even left this film saying, all I'll say is that you didn't see your body. And I was like, the director quite purposefully put you to the point where he was incinerated because he probably knew people were going to be like, oh, he escaped, he's James Bond. So it really did have to show you, like, no, he did.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I can... if I knew the context of the franchise better, then I could have a more informed opinion on it. But the way I see it, as someone who's watched all of the Daniel Craig films, is, again, like I just said, it's one big narrative. And unlike all the other Bonds, I've read that this is the first time they actually anticipated a final film for an actor. Yes. So this is a really unique opportunity. It kind of gets into the trope where a final film of something has to result in a death, and the thing I particularly linked this to was, especially with the family bonds that this film does establish, which the other Daniel Craig films at least don't do, is the essence of family. And the film franchise I kind of linked this to was the Has Fallen franchise. Have you seen those films, like the London Has Fallen, Olympus Has Fallen? Well, in the final film, we get introduced to the dad of the lead protagonist, and it's kind of that fatherly son bond, and by the end, I do think he dies. I don't know, I can't remember it correctly, but you still have that parallel, and I guess you don't have that all in the previous films, but suddenly you do, and you're like, oh, something is coming, and then this film does exactly that. So it does fall into like a trope, I guess, or a trope that's developing, because it's not been a historical one with franchises, but I do see, at least modern day, because the article did say this specifically, that at least modern day films, they have to have a death at the end of it, of the narrative, for it to be so impactful. And I understand that, and I think this could have been written differently and perhaps left open. But do I think him dying is a negative? Absolutely not, because if you think of the character as one person, then how do you explain away the Daniel Craig portrayal compared to Timothy Dalton? Because I heard that he's very different, and that Daniel Craig gave the best performance, like in terms of actual, again, philosophical James Bond portrayal in his head. Like, he was the most dedicated to the original Ian Fleming novels, or description of the character. And also, how would you describe just the general changes of his facial features?
Well, I want to talk a little bit about this, and I'll start by saying, you're getting a little bit into the weeds with that, but it's something that I can talk to as a Bond fan and fanatic who kind of knows these things, which is that until Casino Royale, they wanted to have their cake and eat it with that whole continuity thing, because they wanted, I think, the audience to still have it be that it was all the same person. Spoiler alert for On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which I will talk about, so if you haven't seen that, apologies. But in that film, Bond basically gets married to Diana Rigg's character, Countess Tracy, and she dies at the end of the movie. And it's like a huge, impactful event in James Bond's life. And so naturally, a couple of times after that, in Roger Moore's films, you see that he's visiting Tracy's grave. And I think it's mentioned in the Dalton film or something as well. So it's kind of like, it is supposed to have been happening to the same guy, and you're just supposed to either headcanon away or ignore the kind of different appearance and the slightly different portrayal, because they kind of wanted it to have this loose continuity.
Yeah.
But I still disagree that it's a bad thing to have him killed off, because I don't understand how anybody can come away from Casino Royale and not realize that is a genuinely complete reboot, because it starts with him getting his 00, which is like... Yeah. that is film language for just like, look, we're starting from the beginning again. Disregard everything you've seen. This is a new continuity or timeline or whatever you want to call it. And to Stephen, I've had this discussion, and bear with me, it is relevant, but I pointed out, I compared it to the recent Star Trek movies, which are still linked to the sort of overall franchise, but they're in their own timeline or whatever you want to call it. And I was like, something controversial happens in the first one of those that I don't particularly like, but that everybody just says, well, it's fine because it's not in the primary whatever timeline you know of. And I was like, how is that any different than just, well, this is just the James Bond of these 5 movies that died. It's not every James Bond ever. So if you don't like it, then fair enough. There's going to be another one. I mean, the end of the movie has the traditional James Bond will return.
Will return, yeah. The way I saw it is like, I finished watching the film and I thought whoever plays the next James Bond is going to have their work cut out. Because not only is Daniel Craig a really good actor, and his portrayal of James Bond was excellent in my opinion. I can't compare it to the old ones, but I do think he performed really well, especially in this final film. If we're talking about Daniel Craig quickly, he was superb in this film, and I think it's one of his career highlights, in my opinion, in terms of performance. But besides the point, whoever plays the next James Bond, good luck to you, because no matter what happens now, the diehard Craig fans or the fans of this film and the kind of narrative is told, they will, like Daniel Craig was when he was cast, they won't like him, especially now that the previous Bond has died. So no matter what happens, they are going to get criticism straight off the back, which is not fair.
That's speculation. I would say the opposite. I think people will be fine because they just want a continuing James Bond, unless it turns out to be, and this is disgusting that I should have to say it, this will be controversial, but unless it's a controversial choice like a person of colour or somebody of a different sexuality or a woman that gets cast in the role.
I don't think he'll be a woman. Like Daniel Craig said, make some like strong female characters so you don't have to change the gender of a established male character in books and stuff.
Yeah. Oh, I'm completely with you, and I've had this discussion with women who have understood it, and my point is just that I'm not saying you can't do that, and you can't have with this film kind of, dipped its toes into the female 007. But at the same time, you can't then call yourself an Ian Fleming's James Bond movie, because you're not Ian Fleming's James Bond. Yeah. At that point, you're a different character.
Like, I heard the point that in the books is always been described as a white man. But the point is, if that is the case, if they do change it to a black man, I would love to see Idris Elba play the James Bond. I think he would be fabulous.
Yeah, and I can see the argument like, oh, well, he's always been described as white, and that's different in the book. But it's very different to kind of, and maybe it would be different if we had a gender-neutral name or something like Sam, and then you could just have it be still the same. But again, it wouldn't necessarily, it wouldn't be the same character if you switch genders. It's not a situation like, for example, Doctor Who, where it's baked in that, regeneration is a weird alien thing that can give you anything. So to me, it has to be a male actor, not for misogynistic reasons, but I'm fine if it turns out to be a person of color, or, like I said, anybody who happens to be a non-straight sexuality, and we start, if they want to go ahead with that and have, bisexual or homosexual.
I think the least controversial one there, in terms of production standpoint, in terms of keeping to the books, is casting it maybe like a homosexual or a bisexual person as opposed to a person of color. I'm not saying, again, my ideal casting is Idris Elba, so I'm not saying it shouldn't be a black person. I'm just saying from a production standpoint, linking to the books, the sexuality would be the safest route to go down.
Well, they're kind of hinting at that anyway, because there's a lot of let's say sexual tension in Skyfall between Silver and Bond, and Silver very much hinting at kind of Bond being bisexual and kind of that kind of thing, which some people had a huge problem with, but was kind of like, come on, it's James Bond. He would clearly go to bed with anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There's a lot of women he goes to bed with. Yeah, like every film. Oh, what home woman is he going to sleep with today? Oh, he's going to sleep with all 3 of them. Nice.
Yeah, exactly. And, like I said, you can see he's not going to be picky. But regardless, that's
the original kind of point I was going to make is I did tell you after you did give this explanation about Stephen's opinion. I was like, well, I saw this film and I loved it. He saw this film and disliked it because he didn't think it was being true to the character, and I can understand. I have no context, he has a context. However, I would still like, without that context, or maybe with the context, I'll still like it, but without that context, I love the movie, and I would not swap it to dislike this movie with the context. So I feel like I'm in a better position than him, just because I came out of this with a positive output as opposed to a negative.
Yeah, to give you the other side of that equation, which again gives the game away for the end, but I love the film as well. And as somebody who is that, I've seen every Bond film, just like Stephen has. Unlike him, I own them all. I'm deep in the weeds. As I say, I've got encyclopedias and the making of books and everything. And I thought this ending was perfect for this Bond. Yeah. For this particular James Bond as the end of this 5-chapter story. I think
most would say it's like not a perfect movie, but most would say it's a good, satisfying conclusion for this Bond. So I'm sure people would agree.
Again, I could understand his point, because I wouldn't say just have any Bond movie where Bond dies, because that wouldn't always work. But I think it works here because you've done the groundwork, and even in Spectre, it's very much like, I'm retiring and I'm going to live with this woman, and I'm not going to be a spy anymore. So where do you take the story from there anyway? Yeah. Kind of logically, if you think about it, that's kind of the only place it could go. And that leads me to another point that I was thinking of in the movie. And again, it sounds like a detour, but bear with me, I have a point. But
no worries.
The TV series Smallville, which just reached its 20th anniversary, did this thing where it had Clark Kent have a mad love affair with Lana Lang, his first love, but then realised that obviously you've got to separate them because Clark's got to be with Lois Lane in the end. So it did this really ridiculous story where it had Lana Lang infected with some kind of kryptonite, and it was like, oh, you can never get within like 10 feet of her again, Clark Kent, or you'll die horribly, which now explains why you can't be with her, even though she's clearly this impactful love of your life. And I thought that's where this film was going, and I was ready to hate it, because I was like, if this film ends with them going like, oh, Bond, you can't see the love of your life or your daughter again, but you can still go out on missions, so now you're going to rejoin, and you're going to hate everything because you're frustrated at not being able to see them because of this genetic thing. And I was like, that would suck. I would have hated that plot line if that's what they went with. Yeah. So I'm actually really pleased they went the other way, and we're just like, no, he's going to die. He's got nothing to live for at this point. So, yeah.
Yeah, but to get back on track, you did ask me about the music, so I'm just going to throw that question back at you without even answering it. What do you think of Hans Zimmer's score? No,
I didn't. I definitely talked about you. I think you might maybe getting a drink or whatever, but I did say that you would appreciate that I really loved it, because I didn't really notice the score during Interstellar. But I think it was very impactful, and it really enhanced the film for me, the Hans Zimmer score. I really appreciated it, and I liked it a lot.
Those of you that have listened to Interstellar that are also listening to this review, how you will know my opinion on this. How can you not, and you will understand, how can you not notice a score in Interstellar?
I'm autistic. What happens sometimes?
But you notice a score in this film, but not Interstellar, which has literally the most popular, one of the most popular scores in movies. Yeah. Movie history. Oh, well. But yeah, again, I agree. This music is fantastic, and I think Zimmer knocked out of the park with the final 10 minutes, but again, he usually does. His climactic score towards the end of the film is always superb.
Yeah, just to bring it back, because we've skipped over a little bit that I genuinely forgot until I'm looking at my notes now. So the film doesn't actually start with the kind of big action sequences that we were talking about. It begins with a young Madeline and her what seems like an alcoholic mother, and she first meets the villain of this film, whose name I almost certainly won't remember because he was so unimpactful anyway. But let's see if I've written it. Yes, Safin. Sure. Yeah. So she first meets Safin with his crazy sort of baby doll mask, and kills her mother because Mr. White, her father, had kind of killed his family or whatever. And we do get that cool sequence. And aside from the fact that Safin somehow doesn't age when Madeline does, which is very weird, I thought this was a really cool tense sequence of her in the ice and him shooting to try to get to her, and then in the end rescuing her, and the tie-in of those two characters. I thought it was pretty cool.
I mean, I think the whole reveal of it's Safin. I was just like, oh my god, I forgot the name already. Yeah, Safin, the whole reveal of him was really well done. It got a jump out of all the audience in the theatre. And my point is, Rami Malek in this film, I know a lot of people don't like him in this film. He is like the prosthetics, he's just talking, but I still think he's very sinister with the very little he's given. And I do think if you're going to criticize him sitting down, criticize not the actor but the director or the writer for writing him and directing him in that position. It's not a fault of the acting, in my opinion. And I like the villain. I think the villain has an underbaked story and is not really well developed. However, I do like the base, his layer, you could say. The white building he's in that James Bond eventually does die in. I thought that was beautiful, and the whole flower scene, that was fantastic. And the daughter couldn't touch the flowers. I thought that was fabulous. And I guess that kind of showed the power that he had. And I think it really did that well in terms of just showing how he is a powerful, rich man, and he's got control over these people. And it gives him a false sense of security at times, especially when like they're hidden under that fishing well or wishing well. James Bond has literally just left them there, and then he just pops around the corner like, oh, I'm here now. And I just think that's fantastically eerie. And I do think no,
I don't buy that for a second. I think, well, for sort of that particular scene, I remember talking about again with Stephen at the time and saying it was ridiculous because as soon as he was kind of shot, perhaps it's because I've seen that many of these films, but the entire way through the action sequence, I was like, where is he? He's clearly going to pop back up at the least opportune moment, and
of course.
He's not dead. You haven't made sure he's dead, so I was waiting for the inevitable kind of like, ha-ha, and so to me that was very cliche, but I think that sums up the whole character. I think the villain in this movie was shite. Wow. I thought he was terrible, and it's partly because I don't really rate Rami Malek's acting most of the time, and I don't think he was great here. I don't think the foreign accent was necessary, and I don't think it worked. I don't think he was sinister at all. He just came off as kind of wimpy and annoying. And when he started delivering his big villain speech about, we're both the same, we both want better worlds, but my way is tidier. It's such a cliche that I'm literally sure I've heard that recently in a different thing because it's so like, yeah, whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so, I get people's criticism of it is like just a person talking with like heavy prosthetics on. Not heavy prosthetics, but just with prosthetics. I wasn't a fan of the prosthetics either. Were you?
I wasn't fine with that. It was more that like I didn't understand why he was putting on an accent because there was nothing to indicate that he had to be from any particular place or whatever. And it was hard to identify what the accent actually even was. And then it just didn't work for me. He didn't quite pull off whatever that accent was meant to be. And if you compare it to, for example, although I know these are foreign actors, but Christoph Waltz as Blofeld or Javier Bardem as Silver, they talk with an accent and I'm like, oh, these people are sinister and they're talking and I'm listening. Whereas with Rami Malek, I was like, what? Can't understand a word you're bloody saying.
Nah, that's just your accent. You can't understand accents, mate. I understand everything, so I don't know about you. What happened with you?
Well, regardless, I think it was too much like whisper and whatever. But regardless, talking about, since we're on that kind of subject, the villain kind of plots, this was the other thing that really bugged me about the movie, is that it clearly dispatches the whole of Spectre way too easily, all in one room. And it's like, that's ridiculous. They're supposed to be, they're this overarching organization that have been like, they've got their hands in everything and it's the whole plot of the first 4 movies. And then in this one, it's like, they're all in one room. Never mind, they're all dead. Like, what? That's a ludicrous statement for a start. And then quite aside from that fact, which takes a huge leap of logic anyway, and to be to give full disclosure here, this actually comes from watching Pitch Meeting, who pointed this out to me. But the villain's plot in terms of Safin is just that I'm so mad at Spectre because they killed my family or whatever, so that's my goal, which is why he goes after Madeline and her mum and whatever at the start of the movie. So then halfway through the movie, he dispatches all of Spectre. So then quite rightly, in Pitch Meeting, they were like, okay, so job done. He's fine. He's achieved his goal.
Yeah.
So why is there still a movie? Why is he now like, and now I'm going to move on to a different thing, which is just like, where'd that come from? Do you know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I agree. And another point that you did make, if we're going to stick with the negatives for a quick moment, I think Ana de Armas was pretty wasted, and I'm not quite sure why she was there in the first place. It could have been given to someone else. It is a very inconsequential role, and I think she's very pretty. She could have stayed around for longer. I do think she is a good actress. What do you think?
Yeah, I fully agree with you, and I'm disappointed because I think, as we pointed out, this might be in its own like little pocket continuity. It might preclude that character from appearing again in the most obvious ways. Yeah. Because, well, I mean, she could, I guess, and they could just not acknowledge it, but it's kind of a shame to have wasted her on a role that, like you said, it doesn't really serve a narrative purpose within the film anyway. You could have cut the whole scene, but it's blatantly a matter of that they cast her because they were like, well, we need a super sexy, single woman to market this film on, and we can't use the sort of kick-ass, woman spy who's not going to be interested in anything, and we can't use James Bond's missus because she's only got eyes for him, so let's just stick a random scene in with this sort of sexiest woman we can find at the moment.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, but it's got no point. Particularly when you think about like the film goes to pains to bring back Jeffrey Wright as Felix Leiter, and to have him be an important part of the plot. And it's like, so why not just give him that scene?
Exactly,
because that way you at least give Bond even more of a chance to, no pun intended, bond with him, so that when he inevitably dies, you're like, oh, this is even more impactful now. Because if you haven't seen the other films, he gets like one scene with him.
Yeah, we do get that character balance with Léa Seydoux. There's some really weird names in this film. But yeah, she plays like the love interest who kind of goes away but then comes back and then is like traumatized by the guy. And I really enjoy her.
That's great, but she's not... She's fantastic, but the problem I have there, and the problem the filmmakers had, I think, is that you can't really call her a Bond girl in that sense, because while she is tied to the plot, no, it's not that. She's tied to the plot, and she's James Bond's love interest. But she's very much like a Bond girl. Isn't like, I'm going to marry you and whatever else, with the exception of on Her Majesty's Secret Service. So I would elevate her. I would say she's more than a Bond girl. And the Bond girl of this movie is probably Ana de Armas, which again is weird because she gets one scene.
Yeah,
so, but I appreciate what the film is doing in terms of giving.
And with Leah, she does get the dignity.
And in terms of giving Bond a more meaningful relationship and actually, something that lasts between two films, and even getting into having a daughter and stuff. I'm for that. I appreciate it, but at the same time, if that's what you're moving the Bond girl into being, don't then go, oh, but we also need to have some woman with big tits just to have an action scene.
I mean, I wouldn't call it big. Yeah, but I get
you get what I'm saying. We need to have some woman in a skimpy dress just having an action scene because it's James Bond after all.
Yeah, and considering your long history with like predicting scenes, when she said, oh, that's not your daughter, did you think it was his daughter?
Not at first, but then I realised at the end what they were doing.
Gotcha. I was the same. I know you predicted the stay thing and instead of really quickly, so I thought maybe this was the same case, but no. No,
I took her on face value, but I think that's the acting because Léa Seydoux, when she was like, she's not yours, I had no reason to doubt it because she didn't play that as like, and I'm lying. And it wasn't until the end when the villain almost reveals it to him, and then obviously in her last speech she's like, oh, she has got your eyes and whatever else. I was like, so you were lying. I get it now.
Yeah. This film does really well what I don't think Skyfall does as well. And I did tell you this. Well, I told you that I preferred this over Skyfall, but I never kind of elaborated on why. With Skyfall, it's a really great action movie. It goes from action to action to action without taking a breath, really. Whereas this movie and Casino Royale, which I also prefer to Skyfall, it's got more twists. This film has twists aplenty, and I really appreciate that. Like, I appreciate Skyfall on the spectacle front, but in terms of story, in terms of being gripped, in terms of being surprised, I think this film does that really well, and I think this is the best film for that since Casino Royale. I don't think Spectre does it amazingly. Skyfall has very little twists, whereas Casino Royale...
I disagree with you on that one.
Really?
Yeah, I would disagree because I think both of those examples, I think, do have the things that you're alluding to, because Skyfall is basically all about M, and it gives her the chance to get foregrounded into the action and the kind of... the twist of like her connection to everything and of going back home for James Bond to... Skyfall, which is what the film's named for. So I think that does enough there, and the character work is basically Bond and M. And in Spectre's case, I would say it's exactly what we've said with this film. It's basically him and Léa Seydoux actually like falling into meaningful love, and him by the end of the movie sort of saying, well, I've had enough, I'm jacking it in, I'm retiring, and I'm going to go and live with you. And, that was intended to be the end of his story until Daniel Craig agreed to come back for one more film. So yeah, I think that impact is there and that kind of emotion in that film. The only one that I think really lacks it is Quantum of Solace, but
of course.
We could discuss the problems with that film at length. It's a film that was written during a writer's strike, and it shows.
Yeah. That's probably the only film that I can actively say I dislike.
Yeah, same. I've always said that, though. It's the only Daniel Craig film, at least, that I can say just like it's. I don't like it at all.
Yeah,
and it's the only one of only one of these five I think that you could basically cut out and still get the exact same narrative, one way or the other.
Yeah. But yeah, before we do move on to another character, 007, technically, I do want to touch upon our favourite kind of memorable scenes. And a memorable scene for me is the ship actually sinking. I do think it's a bit far-fetched, of course, like the ship is sinking for ages, and we get some wide shots, exterior shots of literally the ship underwater, but somehow there's a pocket of air just there for good reason, to keep him alive, and how somehow he just kicks the door open, which would never happen in real life. But again, you have to suspend disbelief for this film, and of course the franchise on a whole.
That's spy films, isn't it, really, overall?
Yeah, but I really like the action. Like, how can you not like the well, I'm sure you like the action and you think it's good, but how do you not think that scene is great?
I just didn't, for starters, I didn't really remember that scene. I didn't find it memorable, or there wasn't anything that was like stood out for me. It's in my mental Rolodex with 1,000 James Bond scenes on boats, and the most memorable part about it is the death of Felix Leiter, which I did not agree with, and I agree with, again, shout out to
Stephen.
What's it called? Pitch meeting. In this case,
I thought you forgot your friend's name. Then I was like, oh my god!
No.
How dare you?
The pitch meeting points out that there's no story reason for a lot of these things, except that it's the end, and you've got to wrap things up. So it is very much like, we've killed off Felix Leiter. Why'd you do that? Got to wrap things up. Okay, Spectre's gone. We've somehow killed them all in one room. What? We've got to wrap things up. Blofeld's dead. Why? Got to wrap things up, and it's the end. And I was like, that was one too many. Where I was like, really though? Come on, you know what I mean? You've hallmarked 1,000 times. This is the end thing. So I was like, yeah, you could have. There was no point in including Felix Leiter to kill him off just because you could, especially if you were planning to kill off James Bond at the end anyway. You know,
I thought he was a good kind of comic relief character before that. I know he's not a comic relief character, but he did serve that purpose in this film, in my opinion. No?
I'd always love having him in the film, but not if his only purpose to be there is to be betrayed and killed, which is just kind of silly.
But we do get the awesome scene. I'm not sure what the building is, like how you would describe it. It's a venue, I would say, and you have Anna and Daniel like shooing off these villains from either side, and I thought that was also in Cuba, in Cuba. I thought that was a really superb scene as well. How it kind of like switched between the two in terms of camera.
That was great.
Yeah, there were quite a few continuous shots as well, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah, that was the one action scene that I did actually think was memorable, but then I'm partly like, I'm thinking to myself, am I remembering it because it's a really good action scene or because it's Ana de Armas's only scene in the film? So it's like, but I do think it is a really good action scene. Maybe the bias helps me to focus more or whatever, but I like that it was all one continuous thing and it kind of goes on different levels and them sort of spinning around each other with guns in this kind of choreographed way. I'm always a sucker for that kind of thing.
Yes.
So yeah, I appreciated it. But on a just to get back to my previous thing, on an opposite point from the action, in terms of including Felix Leiter, the one thing I did appreciate, because I wasn't expecting it, was when Bond has to kill the kind of CIA traitor, and he says something like, "Oh, come on, brother, help me," and he just says, "I had a brother. His name was Felix Leiter." And I was like, I was expecting him to say Blofeld because of the whole events of the previous film.
Yeah.
But instead, when he flipped it and was like, his name was Felix, I was like, that's impactful, and I kind of appreciate that.
Yeah.
But again, the film had a lot of plots, and I think it was at least 20 minutes, half an hour too long, and could have cut one or two of them to give you the central crux.
That's the thing. I think I must be the only one who actually didn't have a problem with the pacing, because I was thoroughly gripped with this film all the way through, except for maybe like 30 seconds where I was just like kind of drifting off a bit. Not to sleep, but like daydreaming. I was like, oh, this has to be done after this. So it kind of did lose my interest in some parts, especially with the nanotech explanations, which did kind of get convoluted, I believe, at the end. It wasn't completely clear why he couldn't leave. Well, it was made clear, but the actual point about the nanotech wasn't, in my opinion. And the same with my nan and my granddad, who also criticised the actions of James Bond. My granddad was saying, because he's a fan of the old stuff as well, and he was saying, oh, if it was this James Bond actor, he would have went down there, or he would have done this, which Daniel Craig didn't do. And again, that's not an actor thing, that's just a director. But again,
that's just, you've got to acknowledge different times. I mean, you can't say, you know, because the Bond in 1963 would do this, that the Bond now should, because times move on. That's people have got to accept that a little bit sometimes, you know.
But again, it's linking to the Steve point earlier about the the characteristics.
Oh yeah, completely. Yeah.
Yeah, but I was completely gripped with it, and I was taken away. And again, only those 2 moments around the midpoint of the film, second act really, which is inconsequential anyway. Not much happens. I say not much happens. It's quite a lot of talking. You get scenes of Rami Malek. You get scenes back in the constituency, and you also get the scenes where again they're reunited and she walks out of the room as the villain kind of approaches, which I also found a slightly awkward scene, but again I do enjoy it, and I do think it's really well performed, especially from Craig. Again, I want to touch upon it again. A lot of people have been saying it. I completely agree. In my opinion, it's Daniel Craig's best performance when he's climbing up the ladder to go to his fate while he's on the phone. I think the specific moment that really stands out for me is where he actually emerges out of the kind of the door, like the thing that kind of opens up at the top of the ladder, and of course he's shot. So kind of, again, you have to spend disbelief or belief or whatever the phrase is, that he can actually climb the ladder when he's been shot once or twice. But I just think the emotion on his face is phenomenal, and I don't. With James Bond, there's a lot of acting, of course, but there's not a lot of character beats. Action is over character, in my opinion, except from this film.
I agree. Yeah, I mean that's the kind of point, is that you wouldn't really get character depth before, and this comes from somebody who's a fan. There's not a lot of movies that give the James Bond character a ton of emotional depth until Daniel Craig. Yeah,
but maybe I'm just kind of narrow-minded, because great acting to me is 99% of the time during the character beats, and I'm a sucker for character beats, and I think Daniel Craig finally got to show off this. Of course, you do have the death scene of M in the Skyfall movie, which I think hits less than this film in terms of James Bond death. Of course, the James Bond death is far more impactful than the death of M, in my opinion. Would you say the same? Of course, because it's the protagonist, and the score is much more emotive. But yeah, you finally got that scene.
I should probably have said this sooner, but again, and once again, spoilers for On Her Majesty's Secret Service. When they kill off Bond using the same song, We Have All the Time in the World, from On Her Majesty's Secret Service, they were well aware of what they were doing, that would pull on the heartstrings of like long-term James Bond fans and bring that memory kind of back and everything. And it's a song that gets you emotional anyway, but linking it to that, I think is, and I knew that because it's actually, what's the word? Kind of hinted at very early in the film. It's set up for you, because during one scene, Bond and Madeline are kind of talking, and she says she has no time or something, and he says, "Oh, darling, you have all the time in the world," to her. Yes. And I was like, "Oh, I know what that means."
Yeah.
Oh, that doesn't bode well. But I thought it would probably mean she would die. You know what I mean? But yeah, so I think that was really impactful. That was one of the things I appreciated them doing, and that did really hit hard for me.
Yeah, I guess that kind of notes back to the past for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Which is, again, why I need to get through the films.
Yeah. Well, just that one, really.
But we need to talk about the elephant in the room. 007. We have spoken about this privately. Would you like to say what your thoughts are on 007 in this film?
This is probably going to be controversial, and it's going to make me sound like the kind of person that I'm not. Ordinarily.
Nice. Okay.
That I'm not at all, sorry. But yeah, I just don't think the character had a point in the movie, other than, and again, this sounds horrible because it's all right-wing buzzwords, but other than box ticking, other than, person of colour and woman now gets to be a 007, which, great, cool, but give that character a personality, which to me she just didn't have. There was no connection. She had no connection to anything or anyone in the film. She just kind of kept on appearing.
Yeah.
And my least favourite films are the films where she's like jealously bickering over who gets to get the 007 code name or whatever. And yeah, even to the point that because she has no connection, I thought it was incredibly lazy writing that at the very end, when she has to kill the Russian doctor guy who invented the virus, they have him randomly become racist out of nowhere to give her the motivation. So out of nowhere, he's like, with this, I could kill your entire race. And she gives you the worst line in the movie, which is, do you know what time it is? It's time to die, which is... just abysmal writing that entire scene from start to finish.
Oh, God. Yeah. I did get that kind of essence from the cinema screening as well. It's like oh, this is going on for a bit too long. We don't need this. But the scene that I do really love with her in, where we don't kind of get that, is where she takes off her wig and then he's like, I didn't realize that was going to be the thing you took off. I love that scene. I just burst out laughing. And the cinema burst out laughing as well. It was a really packed cinema screen, and that's the one scene where she isn't really kind of on that subject, and I think it really stands out the humour.
To be clear, I love the actress Lashana Lynch, and I love the
I think she's very good.
What we got of the character in terms of being a kick-ass, blank slate. Fair enough. And would I want to see a movie with her? I'll watch a spin-off tomorrow if you're going to actually give her more than just, I'm here to kick things and break away for a man to get through past me. You know what I mean? Because that's what I said. She wasn't connected to this story, which is why she felt shoehorned into it. Because it's not her story; it's James Bond's, and I didn't see the link there. If people do, then fair enough. I'm not going to say fair that you're wrong or whatever. But I didn't see the purpose in this movie for having a replacement 007 of any kind, and having just not retired the number. It just seemed like it was. Again, it was one of the things that I don't like is that they just stick plot on top of plot on top of plot, and it's very much a hat on a hat because you didn't need a lot of this stuff to tell whatever story they wanted to tell. You only really needed like Bond, Madeline, the villain, and the MI6 guys. But again, it seems like it was designed to be like, oh, you know what will get us in the newspapers if we have a new 007, but it's a black woman. Oh, that'll get us interested. People will write about that, and it'll rile up all the right people and stuff. And it's like, yeah, but it's so cheap. It's such a cheap thing to do if there's no reason for it. And,
what we're doing, essentially, Michael, is we are giving a really negative review for a film that we really enjoy. So if it is a self-contained story, then these characters may not be able to return, which is, in my opinion, suicidal, because it's majorly disappointing if that's true. Because this film is set up quite a few little threads, and because of the death, how will continuity wrap up said threads? Like, if this is on its own, I don't mind those threads being open. But what I'm disappointed with is the missed opportunity for more of that.
Well, yeah, exactly, which is my point. Like, why introduce things that you might think would be cool going forward in a film where 90% of it is you wrapping everything up with all of the killing things off and stuff? Yes. You know what I mean? It's like, it seems counterproductive to introduce anything in what you're making as your final part of a story, because naturally it can't go anywhere, especially if you're then putting such an ending on it that and James Bond died, therefore there can't be another Bond film, at least in this timeline. I mean, I suppose you could make another spin-off or whatever and just say it's in the world that James Bond's now dead, but would the audience go to see that is the question. But having said that, they did bring Judi Dench over from the Pierce Brosnan films into
the premiere, right? Of course.
No, over from the Pierce Brosnan Bonds into the Daniel Craigs, and just didn't explain it. So she was M in both versions, but it can't possibly be the same person. So they could, I guess, bring everyone back. But again, it means that you've had no character development because you're starting with a blank slate, because you're saying these are the same characters, the same actors, but they're not the ones you just saw, which is so weird. And again, it's like, what have you done that for? So, it'll be very interesting to see what they do with the next movie, because it seems like whatever they do, they're going to have a mountain to climb one way or the other.
That's what I'm saying about the actor. No matter what happens, they're going to have a difficult outward journey to kind of get to the Daniel Craig level. Because I'm going to get to the point later about your tournament that you've done. But before we do get there, I'm interested to know, in terms of tournament-wise, if you're to put all the James Bond actors together, you personally, who would you say your top 3 is?
Oh, that's tough, man.
It is.
It's like, again, slight detour, but it's like Doctor Who in that people always say that your James Bond is whoever you grew up with.
Matt Smith, number one,
first time. I'm a Wilderness Years child, so I kind of don't fit
Paul
into
McGann.
That Who. Well, yeah, I suppose it would be, but I don't fit into that mold as such an easiest way, because it wasn't. And the first one I saw was Tom Baker, which might be why I connect with him, but that's a different conversation. So in terms of James Bonds, I have a real soft spot for Pierce Brosnan, because that was the first. I mean, GoldenEye was 1995, so I would have been 12-ish, maybe a year older.
Yeah.
And that was when I was really starting to focus on films and concentrate and could appreciate them. So that was the Bond that I watched the first and that was the very first Bond that I saw a film of in the cinema, and it was the one that I followed for all of his 4 films. And I appreciated him. So to me, like I said, Pierce Brosnan has a bit of a soft spot, so he might be up there in my estimations.
Okay. What about your
because that was my that was my Bond. But yeah, I would have to include Daniel Craig for the emotional impact, I think, one way or the other, of his particular stories. And I would like to include George Lazenby, but I think because it's only one movie, it's kind of unfair of me to do so. And because I couldn't not put in one of my favorites, who, again, it's not a popular choice, but I love Roger Moore's James Bond.
Oh, no, I would say the same. Yeah, she loves Roger Moore.
Yeah, I love the kind of, yes, it's cliche, but the very sort of upper class English gent of it all, and the kind of gives a sly wink and a joke. And yes, people complained because it wasn't as brutal or as serious as the Sean Connery Bond. But to me, I appreciated it a little bit more because it knew it was silly, but it was like, this is a silly concept, so go with it, I guess.
Yeah.
And I like a lot of those movies, even ones that people don't like. I mean, the only one I detest of those films, of the Roger Moores, is The Man with the Golden Gun. And it's a film I just don't like in general. But I like all the others, even like Moonraker and View to a Kill, and films that are not popular. I could watch them anytime.
Yeah. But now, so the final act, Mr. Michael, I love it. However, there are two nitpicks.
Okay.
Which kind of resolve themselves because he has to get to the top anyway. First of all, I did mention it earlier. He does get shot once or twice. Yeah, he still gets up, he still survives, and he still walks around and runs. Why is that all about? Why didn't he? Yeah.
I'm fine with that. That's typical spy movie cliche stuff.
I'm fine with that.
Even if you just think he's giving it the last of his strength before he dies and whatever, and I
can understand that. Yeah, so am I. But also, something that really confused me, why did Rami Malek's villain just let the daughter go? It's like, oh, I'm going to take you on this adventure, and then randomly in the corridor, oh yeah, just go back to mum. And
he didn't. No. He wasn't planning to take her on an adventure. He was kidnapping her basically for the heck of it. And his reaction there was that she bit him or whatever and hurt him. And his response was just like, "Fine, fend for yourself, you little shit." You know what I mean? So,
I felt that was a bit easy, to be honest with you.
It is, but there's a lot of moments like that that are easy just to get people from A to B. But again, it wasn't untrue of his character. Like, he didn't want a daughter. He wasn't like, "And I'm going to adopt you and make you my daughter now." And so it was understandable that because of his temper and the way he was, if she acts out like that, his response is just going to be, "Fine, fuck it. Yeah. I'm going to just go ahead then."
Yeah. But another reason why I do like Rami Malek's villain is because of that scene where he does shoot him and then he kind of just towers over him. And yes, it is very quick because then he suddenly leaves. But for that 2-3 minute moment, because we knew, well, I didn't know that he was going to die, obviously, but you did get that kind of sense that, oh shit, he's been shot, he's injured, this guy has a gun and he's shooting at him actively. How is he going to get out of this, And then suddenly Rami Malek goes off, leaving him alive, and then he just walks off and then he has to save himself. Unsuccessfully, of course. But for those 2-3 minutes, I was like, wow, this is really gripping intense. And that was the whole reason for that was because of Rami Malek. Well, of course, the writing of him killing not killing, but like shooting him. But I still think that was really well acted by the pair. And again, the character beats from Daniel Craig, because again, this is probably the most he's talked in this final 15 minutes of the film, the most he's talked consecutively in the James Bond films, except for maybe the scenes in Casino Royale where he's around the casino table. But my point is, he's really fabulous. And when he's running away to get back to the boat or whatever, to get off the island, you get this kind of panning up shot of well, not panning up, but just this slow shot panning up of the thing that would ricochet the missile is closing again, and I thought that was massively directed. I loved that. And just the sheer like, oh, excited, and then, oh crap, no, the missile's a minutes away, and how's he gonna get out of this? I just thought tonally it was superb. And then again, the final 10 minutes blew me away. Again, we spoke about it, how it kind of didn't cut until he was literally being exploded. It was fabulous.
It was one of the many lines that had me almost or literally in tears, but I'll go over a few of the rest.
Were you not crying?
Yeah, I was at the end.
Okay.
But like I said, I wasn't so much when James Bond died, because it was kind of like I was stunned.
Yeah.
And I wasn't during that line, but I was getting there because that's when they were playing Louis Armstrong, and I was like, oh, you bastards.
Yeah.
What really broke me was that everyone from MI6 kind of pouring him a drink and saying to James and that.
That was fabulous.
Oh, that's it. I'm gone. But yeah.
I do prefer that monologue as opposed to the family one. The family
Yeah,
one
I
didn't
guess,
hit me
yeah.
as hard.
It did for me, but I can see where you're coming from. But yeah, but related to what you were saying, I should really have said sooner. But yeah, Kari Joji Fukunaga, the director, fantastic job, because he directed both the action and the emotion equally brilliantly and kind of stylishly without being flashy and over the top. And I think, yeah, well, not distractingly so anyway. And I think the film was fantastically directed. So I do kind of hope he gets perhaps a chance to direct a different unconnected Bond film or whatever. But certainly a director I'll be paying attention to anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know who wrote what parts of these films, but it's been widely publicized that Phoebe Waller-Bridge did a rewrite on it. So kudos for whatever you wrote.
I believe she did, yes.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah, okay.
So I'll just say that a couple of little notes that I haven't mentioned yet. I like that there's a bit more of a reintroduction of gadgets in this one.
Yes,
the
there was a
EMP and
distinct
stuff.
lack of that in the Daniel Craig era, and they were
Exactly,
kind of
yeah.
saying, the fans, like when they were doing the Q&A with him, they were like, "Why aren't there no gadgets?" And then when I
Q&A.
saw, yeah, like there was a YouTube video where they got him with Vogue.
No,
I
but
think.
did you must appreciate the pun there. There was a Q and A about gadgets.
Oh, for God. I did it. That was completely coincidental, I swear to God. I wish that wasn't. But yeah, I wish I knew that. But I noticed it straight away that there was a massive load of gadgets. Well, not massive, but there were a handful of gadgets.
More than there have been.
Yeah.
I mean, that's even...
And I think they were all impressive. Like, they served the purpose of the plot.
Yeah, because even in Skyfall or Spectre, one of the two, the whole joke is just Q, who's normally the gadget guy with the crazy outlandish stuff in the other movies, goes to give Bond his package, and it's just like, it's a gun and a pen. You know what I mean? And it's like, oh, is it an exploding pen or something? No, it's a pen.
Yeah.
And a gun. Just shut up. Get on with your mission.
Yeah.
And it's like, the only, just before we get to conclusions, the only other story note I wanted to make is, yes, I kind of get that it's necessary and whatever, but given the nature of we're still kind of living in a pandemic and stuff, I can see why this film was delayed, and I do think it's a little bit distasteful as a plot because it centers entirely around we're going to infect so much of the world with this virus. So to me, I was very slightly uncomfortable at the end with kind of like, oh,
I disagree.
You can disagree if you want. You can't disagree that I was uncomfortable. That's how I felt.
I dictate how you feel.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing one with the other, just it made me uncomfortable because it was very close to the knuckle at this particular time, especially since I was in the cinema nervous about being there for like the second time. I was like, oh.
Were you at least not sweating profusely this time?
Oh, I was sweating profusely all the time. But no, I wasn't actually this time. I was quite well positioned. I was well positioned at the back, and I had foolishly bought myself a bucket of
laxative
salt, combination salted and sweet popcorn from the Spar.
That's my choice all the time.
Yeah,
nice.
It was like £1 from the Spar, and I was like, oh, this looks good. I'm sure it'll be mostly packaging. And I opened it, and it really wasn't. It was like a massive bucket full of popcorn. So I was just trying desperately to get rid of it and get through it and share it with Stephen and everything. And so that's my overriding memory here. Isn't I was distracted by sweating or by the heat in the cinema. It was I was distracted by trying to get rid of this freaking popcorn. But it was a 3-hour movie, so I did succeed.
Nice. But I guess there's my final point before we do get to the audience interaction then. Scores is you made a point about feeling stunned about the death, and when the lights rolled up, there was a woman, black-haired white woman. I don't know how to explain what she looked like, but yeah, the lights went up and she kind of turned around and looking at everyone else, and she was just in awe, and she was stunned, and you could see the glinter in her eye where she was crying, where she'd been crying, and I just thought, that's how we all feel love. And I just thought, it was a stunning film, and I can't believe Steve left it like angry. I'm sad for him. He
wasn't angry as such. He's not really the kind of person that gets angry, but it was sad for me because I was very much stunned, and I got out, and the very first thing he said was, well, that was disappointing. And I was like, oh shit. I'm still in the middle of like being stunned by it all and affected, but okay. And I was like, well, why was it? I liked it. Well, James Bond doesn't die, it's never happened like that.
Michael. Would you like us to go on to the Ask the Audience section?
The audience interaction section is something.
I thought I was still a millionaire then. Yes, go for it.
Well, I'm not going to have to phone a friend for this, but I will go through it.
You will phone me in a minute when I go on to my audience interaction.
Yes, I have a few audience interactions. This is from Letterboxd. Just a few of my kind of mutuals and friends. They're not super long, but I will mention them. This is from Eric Zipper. who is on YouTube. And he gave the film 3.5 stars and says, I liked a lot of things about this, especially the first hour, which ruled, but literally nothing about Safin made sense to me logistically or emotionally, from the writing to the performance. I think you could basically remove him completely, letting Blofeld/MI6 itself kind of fill in the gaps, and you'd end up with a movie that's 40 minutes shorter and twice as good, which I kind of see where he's coming from with that. This is from Esteban Rodriguez, who gave the film 2.5 stars and says, it feels coincidental for me that every theme song for these movies represents the quality of the rest of the film. You Know My Name, absolutely awesome. Another Way to Die, atrocious. Skyfall, really good. Writings on the Wall, mediocre to terrible. No Time to Die, both the song and the movie are fine. Both have heights that are really high and other parts that are not good. This is more for the movie. I kind of like the song. Sure. Okay. This is from Abby For Real, who gave the film's 3.5 stars, the film, and says maybe Phoebe Waller-Bridge should do rewrites on like every movie going forward. Okay, calm down, Abby. This is from Alex Marzonia, who gave the film 5 stars and says, holy moly, this movie rules. Didn't feel the length and loved all the choices it makes, though the latter acts aren't as strong as the first few. To me, it's the perfect combination of the old and new Bond movies. I also just bought into everything it was throwing at me and didn't try to predict anything and just let moments sink in, and the tears well. I agree with that because I did too. It really helps that I watched all the Craig Bonds in the past few days, and the stunning IMAX footage was damn overwhelming, which I'm sure you could relate to. Will, yeah. This is from someone just called Jonathan, who gave the movie 4 stars. I don't know his surname, but he's my mutual friend on Letterboxd. And he says, No Time to Die is exciting and full of action, emotional and not unemotional. Okay. Best of the previous Craig films. Yes, like many endings, No Time must bring all the storylines to a sensible end. Despite its length, the film is too short. Wow. And here lies the problem, because the film looks very overloaded and unfortunately often gets lost. But not least in spite of this, it is also a Bond best of, a deal. And my goodness, it's worth it. Goodbye, Mr. Bond. Yeah. Don't really agree with a whole lot of that, but in the interests of fairness, there we go. And finally, this is from my friend Dan, who, again, no surname, but Letterboxd Pro, who's a mutual of mine. He gives the movie 4 stars and says, I have lots of thoughts on this, but for now, here's what I'll say. Although I very much enjoyed No Time to Die, it did feel like a Hollywoodized version of James Bond compared to the rawness of, say, Casino Royale. It's definitely one of the more emotionally charged Bond films. Daniel Craig gives a great performance that will likely fly under the radar, and the action is always entertaining. The villainous plan is pretty neat and feels very timely. However, Rami Malek is wasted a little bit. He doesn't show up until a good hour into the film. Obviously, somebody arrived there because he's in the first scene. On a technical level, everything is there, but my issues tend to come from the script. Just a notch below Casino Royale and Skyfall. Way better than Quantum of Solace. Haven't seen Spectre. Dude, come on.
Wow.
You're only seen half story anyway. But if you're a diehard fan of the classic Bond sensibilities, you might find this strays from the path. Entertaining, technically proficient from the score to the cinematography, direction to production design, and emotional with some humorous moments. A few too many, which at times make it feel like an MCU film.
I can understand that, but I didn't feel like that. Oh, shut up.
Insecure, most films did way before.
Insecure.
But it does feel more along the lines of Mission Impossible than 007, though the action isn't quite on that level. Overall, it's a strong send-off for Craig, but there are a few questionable decisions for me with the screenwriting. Okay, don't agree, but there we go. And that's it. I will give my own review when we get to it.
Yeah, I'm not going to do the same as you. I'm not going to do the reviews. I'm just going to read out the scores. And because I have been coughing like nuts, as you just heard my co-host Michael do, and I'm going to cough as well. We are ill today. I'm
not ill, I'm just...
Star Wars fan 007 gave it a 4 star. A Bean Soup gave it a 3 star. Jack Birdson 1234 gave it 4.5 star. Will Templar gave it a star. Marvel Man gave it a star. Harry Membry gave it a 4 star. Dan Z1 gave it a 3.5 star. Ranik Designs gave it a 4 star. Joe Decon gave it a 3.5 star. Dan gave it a 4 star. Jonathan gave it a 4 star. Matt Hall, some may know as Matt Whelan, gave it a 5 star. George Sheard, who some may know as Ace Creeper, gave it a 4 star. And Jane gave it a heart without a score, but I think she does like it. I'm going to click onto a review. RIP to Casio Rose on the next James Bond. Okay. Her choices are James Norton, Aidan Turner, Tom Hiddleston, Rami Malek, Harry Styles, James Norton, Mr. Clean, the entire band of Murmured and Sons, Lewis from H2O, Hotel Trivago. Nice. I like that.
Nice.
But yeah, that wraps up the audience interaction for this
So,
episode.
just to bring a little bit more into it, then we did actually, or rather, Will did put out a poll onto the Hit or Miss Big Screen Twitter.
Yes, it did.
So, Will, would you like to go through the results of that poll first of all, and then we have another thing to talk about?
Yeah, yes, we sure do, Mr. Michael. So I put out a poll 3 hours ago because Michael, my incompetent co-host, had. I put out a poll saying, "What would you rate No Time to Die out of 5 stars?" Michael did think that would be a divisive poll, and it turned out to be that. But we do have one
Nice film,
winner.
yeah.
Yeah. So, the results of the poll as a result of the film being divisive. Whatever. The film got a 5-star from 47.6% of the 21 people that voted, clearing away the winner. Then in second place, in terms of most votes, 2-star being the lowest star we could give, because of course it's a Twitter poll, you can only have 4 options. So it goes 5-star, then 2-star with 28.6, and then 4-star with 23.8, and then interestingly, not a single person voted for 3-star. So a lot of people either really enjoyed it or disliked it, which I find interesting.
Yeah, love it or hate it. Nobody's really in the middle on it, is there?
Yeah.
So, okay. Just to give a little bit of extra flavour, then what I've been doing, if you follow me on Twitter, you might know this. On my personal Twitter page for the last few days, I've been doing a poll or a series of polls in a tournament to find out the best James Bond film. And
it's so tight right now.
At time of recording, it's not over. We've got like almost a full day left, but at time of recording, we are onto the final, and the final has ended up being between 2 Daniel Craig films. It is between Casino Royale and Skyfall.
And I just want to point out here, No Time to Die did go out in the semi-finals, but that's a good final.
No Time to Die was included, but yeah, it went out in the semi-finals. And
which isn't bad.
If anybody's, we discussed it again in my previous podcast, but if anybody's wondering where GoldenEye is, because it's very good, it faced Casino Royale, so it was doomed as soon as that happened. Will, as things stand, that's been a few hours since I posted the poll. Where are we on that with who's winning, who's not?
4 hours have passed, and your poll has 51 votes, and with 51% of the vote, yes, there's 1% in it, it's Casino Royale.
Which, I mean, it can still change, but yeah, that shows how close it is.
Yeah, earlier when I was saying always took a big twist, Skyfall was actually still winning, but Skyfall was still winning by 2%, so it's literally tipping between the two right now, so it's very tight.
I'll be honest, I looked earlier on, and when I looked, it was exactly 50-50, which surprised me. So, yeah, it's been changing a few times, so it'll be interesting to see where that ultimately ends up.
It shows how popular the Daniel Craig films are, though.
Yeah. Especially those two, yeah, completely.
Yeah.
But, great. So, did we want to give your conclusion and score, and then I can give mine?
Yeah, sure. I might die of coughing, but
please don't.
We'll see how we go. I said, well, shit, going to review this properly alongside Spectre and Skyfall tomorrow once I get home from work. Needless to say, I thought it was great. And as it turns out, I did not properly review it the day after. So, this is a bit of humble pie. I really enjoyed it. It's a 5-star for me. I wish I gave it a proper conclusion. But you can tell which one of us did the notes this week.
That's fine. I mean, you've went into detail about the things that you liked and disliked, and I think you've justified the score. So, fine.
There were very few detracting factors of this film, and I was just blown away.
Just to get into my conclusion, I just said that there's a lot I could say about this film. Firstly, I agree with the people who say it's a perfect ending to the 5-film saga of Daniel Craig's Bond. I can see there being some disagreement, including my friend who I saw the film with, but to me, it just hit perfectly. The film itself is not quite perfect, however. It's a bit too long. Certain characters, as I've touched on, are superfluous or wasted. The villain, for me, is pretty atrocious, and there really isn't a standout, breathtaking action scene, which, again, I got into earlier. Where the movie soars, though, is in character and emotional beats. There's some great writing, some fantastic acting, and an impact that I definitely felt by the end of the story, which paid powerful and emotional homage to a pre-Daniel Craig Bond film that I've mentioned. I expect there'll be dissenting voices as the film takes big swings and isn't shy about it, but for me, it hits perfectly and slots in as the perfect final chapter for this particular James Bond, unifying all 5 films into a complete and brilliant story. And despite my criticisms, I loved it, and I would give it 4.5 stars. So
you love to see it.
Did you have any other last thoughts before I conclude things, Will?
For our next episode, we are going to be reviewing I will cut
Drum
this
roll.
bell. That did not sound like a drum roll. That sounded like a wet fart.
Okay, hang on. Drum roll.
Halloween special. It was meant to be with Dom, as I did say in the previous episode, but we're doing it a bit differently. We're going to be doing Halloween Kills on the 15th of November, but on the 28th of October. So
It'll be
next
uploaded
week.
on the 31st of October, just to clarify.
Oh, wait, will it?
Yeah, we're recording it on the 28th. We're not uploading it on the same day.
Oh, of course we redid it. Yeah.
Start again. You can edit this.
No, I'm not editing this out. It's got to be raw, Michael. It's got to be raw. The Halloween special will be uploaded on the 31st, where we review the original 70s movie, Halloween, of course, and of course the 2018 version of Halloween, because apparently, according to Michael, the geek himself, he did say that these three, the 70s one, the 2018 one, and the 2021 Halloween Kills one, are the only three technically canon ones now. So, on that note, I'll pass it over to Michael.
Yeah, again, do join us for that one. Yeah, Will hasn't seen any of the Halloween movies yet. I've seen all of them, so I've seen like the 3 or 4 different timelines. But I did point out that that's fine because Will only needs to really watch Halloween 1978 and 2018 because 2018 is a complete reboot of everything except that original movie, which it serves as a sequel to. And then obviously Halloween Kills is a sequel to that, and then Halloween Ends will be out next year as the conclusion of that particular timeline. But regardless, it's not as complicated as it sounds, and it'll give us a nice chance to produce and to bring out a Halloween episode on Halloween.
Pronounce book like I would. Book.
You can find me. I do a hit or miss Doctor Who channel. That is what I do.
Nah, say book normally. Come on.
Book.
Book.
There's 2 O's, not a U.
No, but that's how people pronounce it other than you. Book.
Off, do they?
Book.
That's a type of deer.
Just say book.
Book.
There we go.
It's not the same word.
Yeah, book. It's the way you say not book. We need to wrap this up. See you guys in a bit. Peace out. We're wrapping it up on that note.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.